been to a Fossil Friday before, or anyone new tuning in, a little bit about us. My name is Becky Hall. I'm the Executive Director here at the Nevada Science Center, and I'm here with our Director of Research, Dr. Josh Bondi. So we're located in Southern Nevada, so in the US, in the Las Vegas Valley. We have our little research lab, and both me and Josh are paleontologists, and we get the opportunity to go across the state of Nevada looking for fossils. So we have a whole huge geologic time span of life here in Nevada in the fossil record. But today we're going to be talking about something very cool and really special and something new. So just recently, Dr. Josh and myself, we got a paper accepted to be published for Nevada's first named dinosaur. So we both described it and wrote it up. And so we want to bring Nevadadromeus schmitti to you. So what is Nevadadromeus? What was it like here in Nevada during the Cretaceous? And anything else you might have questions for us as paleontologists. So I'll let Josh get started about Nevadadromeus and the Cretaceous here in Nevada.
Hi everybody, happy Friday the 13th if you're of the superstitious sort. So like Becky said, for our Fossil Friday features this week, we're going to be talking about Nevada's first dinosaur species. So you hear about dinosaur species all the time from places like Montana, Utah, Wyoming, the Dakotas, and that's because those areas, the geology, since the age of dinosaurs, hasn't been super complicated. So when you walk around parts of southeastern Utah or eastern Montana, you're walking across miles and miles of sediments that were deposited by rivers and by oceans during the age of dinosaurs. Here in Nevada, because we're a little bit farther west, we're one state over from California for those of you who are not in the United States, we are closer to big mountain ranges during the age of dinosaurs. And so when you have sediments that are up in the mountains, they're exposed to more rain, more snow. I know in Nevada you don't typically think of snow, but we do get snow here still today. But in the Cretaceous, during the last period of the age of dinosaurs, much of Nevada was high elevation. It would kind of look like what the modern Andes do in South America today. So we don't have that great of a record of dinosaurs because most of our rocks have been weathered away and deposited in other states. So what me and Becky do is we look at geologic maps of the state of Nevada. And if you've tuned into a couple of these before, you've seen some of our finds before, but if you're brand new, we look at the geologic maps, we find the right age rocks, the right types of rocks, and we go out there and we just walk around like old-timey gold prospectors with our eyes on the ground. Most of the time we don't get lucky, but sometimes we do. And so one time we got lucky was in 2008. So we were in Valley Fire State Park, and it was mid-June, late or early July. And one of these, here in Nevada, we get these July thunderstorms that come in. So the thunderstorm starts rolling across the landscape. And here, typically, thunderstorms last maybe 5-10 minutes. You wait them out, and then you just go back to what you're doing. This particular thunderstorm, though, was a hailstorm. And so the hail started pelting us and the students I had with me. And so we were hunkered down on the side of this hill with our eyes on the ground. And that little moisture from the hail created just enough contrast in the sediments that we were able to find not one, but two dinosaurs. And so one of the dinosaurs is the one we're talking about today, which is Nevadadromeus. So Nevadadromeus, what does that mean? I know because lots of dinosaurs have long, complicated names. For those of you kids out there, you're better pronouncing these names than us professional paleontologists are. But Nevadadromeus, so it means Nevada, so from our state of Nevada. And then Dromeus, which is Greek for runner. And so it's the Nevada runner. And then, so that's the genus name. The species name is schmitti. So schmitti comes from a geologist named Dr. Jim Schmidt, who's a professor at Montana State University. And he and his students were some of the first researchers to describe the rocks in Valley Fire State Park, where Nevadadromeus was dug up. And it was conversations with Jim or with Dr. Schmidt led us to actually go start looking at these rocks in the first place. So me, Becky, like Becky mentioned at the outset, along with L.J. Krumenacker at the Idaho State Museum and Dr. Dave Riccio at Montana State University, just published our paper, or at least got our paper accepted for publication. What does that mean? For science has checks and balances. So you can't just go out there and say, this is Nevadadromeus, and therefore it is. So what we have to do is we have to describe the bones, explain why it's a new species, send it out for peer review. So peer review is when you send your work to other scientists to make sure that it's good science. And so they go through it kind of like your teacher would, and they go through it and give you comments and critiques, and then you get it back, and then usually you have to fix a couple things, and then you resubmit it. And so our paper being accepted means that Nevadadromeus is going to be published. It's been approved by other scientists as good science, and so it's officially part of scientific literature now. And so this paper is going to come out probably this summer in what's called the Journal of the Arizona Nevada Academy of Sciences, if any of our colleagues are tuned in. All right, so let's take a look at Nevadadromeus. So Nevadadromeus is based upon, this is the right thigh bone, this is the left thigh bone, and so this is the part that would go into your hip socket. And one thing that sets Nevadadromeus apart from other animals that are closely related is this weird little knob here, which is called the lesser trochanter. So the lesser trochanter is where a muscle would attach either from the thigh or from the tail of the animal. But no other animals of this type have this big of a cleft or this big of a notch between the lesser trochanter and the greater trochanter. I know those are technical terms, but again, if any colleagues are watching, this is what we're defining this thing based upon. Then we also have a string of backbones and some toe bones that all define Nevadadromeus as a member of the group of dinosaurs that is called the thescelosaurs. So the thescelosaurs are a group of animals that used to be called the hypsilophodons. And so that's an antiquated term now, if any of you are dinosaur nerds like I was, probably your age. So what do these things look like? So this is from the Dinosauria, which is kind of our main index as dinosaur paleontologists. So what we're looking at is the two thigh bones, some backbones, and some toe bones from these little two-legged plant-eating dinosaurs that had beaks at the front of their mouths and teeth in their cheeks. So their teeth would look like this. They're relatively simple. And so these simple teeth were used, so their beaks were used for plucking vegetation. These simple teeth would process it. And lots of animals of this sort either process their food in their mouth, or like a bird, some of them had gizzards in their guts.
So you want to grab the poster, bring it a little closer? So you get a big picture of a paleo artist.
So this is an artist depiction of what one of these hypsilophodonts or these thescelosaurs would have looked like. So this is an image that was done by Julius Chinnery of Albertadromeus, which is a closely related thescelosaur, except as the name implies, was found up in Canada, the province of Alberta. So Nevadadromeus was found down here in southern Nevada. And then this is the family tree of these plant-eating dinosaurs. And Nevadadromeus falls out in here. I know the print is really small, you probably can't read it. But if you're interested, you can always shoot us an email and we're happy to send you information on these things.
And all this information, this is the poster product of the article. So as soon as the article is in print, all this information will be on there too.
Absolutely. And so I mentioned that it was in 2008 that we originally found Nevadadromeus. So why did it take so long for us to come up with a name? Well, Becky, you want to bring the camera over here. These are more bits and pieces of Nevadadromeus. So Nevadadromeus has been a jigsaw puzzle for the last decade. So we found it on the surface, bits and pieces here and there, screening the sediment, looking through the screen to try to find little bits and pieces of bones like this. And we know it's bone just by the texture and where it was found. And it's literally been a jigsaw puzzle. So we've been piecing together bits and pieces here and there. And it took us over a decade to piece together enough parts of this animal to be able to say this was indeed something unique, something new to science, and indeed also new to the state of Nevada. Nevada's, like I mentioned, Nevada's dinosaur record is not as great or as robust as surrounding states. But so this is unique and significant in the fact this is Nevada's first named dinosaur. And it just comes from this little plant eater
And we can see the different colors and how it weathered out differently.
Well, that's a good point, Becky. So if you notice the different colors on the bone, that refers to how long that bone was exposed to the sun. And so the sun was bleaching the bones as they were exposed. And the fact that they're different colors, those were different parts of the bone that were either still in the sediment, exposed for either longer or shorter periods of time. And so we can't even use color like you can on a normal jigsaw puzzle to put this thing back together. We have to use actually the shapes. So you're taking completely different colored parts of the puzzle and trying to fit them together. So what was Nevadadromeus eating? If it's a little plant-eating dinosaur. Like I said, this is the thigh bone, so this was not a big dinosaur. If you have had turkey dinner for Thanksgiving, if you're in the United States, or if you've ever had maybe goose or something like that, the thigh bone's maybe almost that big. So we're talking about something maybe as tall as this table, maybe as long as the table. So these were not huge dinosaurs. The name Dromeus means runner. So this thing was probably running away from most other dinosaurs, trying not to be eaten. Me and Becky jokingly call it the sheep of the Cretaceous. So what were some of the plants that this little plant-eating dinosaur was munching on? This is a trunk of a tree fern. So there were tree ferns growing along the banks of the rivers that were passing through southern Nevada 100 million years ago during the mid-Cretaceous.
And these are fossils found near the site of Nevadadromeus.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are fossils that were found essentially alongside Nevadadromeus. So we know that these lived at the exact same time. This is a volcanic ash that preserves some leaves. So you can see some of the veins of a leaf here from a cycad.
There we go.
So if you go to a plant nursery today, cycads are sold as sago palms, so they're still around today. I don't know if this one's going to show up at all, but you'll have to take my word for it. There's a leaf of a magnolia tree in here. These straight stalks are from what are called horsetail reeds. And so these are all plants that were living along the banks of these river systems. Again, 100 million years ago, here in southern Nevada. So the only river that essentially runs through southern Nevada today is the Colorado River. And I can assure you, if you're not from southern Nevada, there are not wild magnolias growing along the banks of the Colorado. So it was a completely different world during this period of time. So who are some of the animals that were living alongside Nevadadromeus? Some of the other plant eaters would have been primitive duck-billed dinosaurs, one that Becky's working on. So this is a backbone of a duck-billed dinosaur. You can see how it's way different than our little Nevadadromeus. You can see how much bigger it is than Nevadadromeus as well. So this would have been a much bigger dinosaur, probably 20 feet long. We also have bones of ankylosaurs, which are their armored dinosaurs. We also have teeth of sauropod dinosaurs, the ones with the really long necks and long tails. Teeth of primitive tyrannosaurs. So when tyrannosaurs were only about raptor size, and actually competing with, we have bones of raptors as well. And then the biggest carnivores, this is a backbone of a giant allosaur that was also found in the same geologic unit. So we can see how the allosaurs, even their backbones look different than Nevadadromeus as well. Some of these giant allosaurs during mid-Cretaceous were as big as Tyrannosaurus rex. So these were great big meat eaters. So imagine being poor little Nevadadromeus trying to hide away or run away from something like this. And living in those rivers with the banks covered in magnolias and tree ferns were things like, we had 3 different species of turtle, a couple different species of crocodiles living here in southern Nevada, lungfish don't even live anywhere near southern Nevada today, and garfish as well. And so it was a wild ecosystem. We have our brand new Nevada dinosaur. We have a couple others that were getting really close to getting out there. So stay tuned if you want to hear more about Nevada's prehistoric past. And we should be bringing that to you here shortly.
And then Dr. Josh, before we head to questions,
Yes.
I got a question for you.
What's that?
Just because we had a student ask us recently, and what is an ossified tendon?
Ooh, that's a good question. So that's not a term you typically hear about, but ossified tendons, as the name implies, It's a tendon like you have in your bodies, except in some groups of dinosaurs, especially in the plant-eating dinosaurs and the raptor dinosaurs, the tendons actually turn into bone. So when a dinosaur holds its body horizontal, it's kind of like a suspension bridge. And so when these tendons ossify, makes them much harder, much stronger to hold the backbones together. It gives the back more strength to hold the tail straight up and to hold the body straight forward, just like a suspension bridge. And so if you think of a chicken, like chickens don't walk upright like us. That'd be kind of creepy and kind of weird, right? So if you actually look at the back of a chicken, it walks with its back horizontal to the ground, and then its head curves out. And so if you have a great big long tail and a great big long body, you need something that's going to give your back a little more strength. And so that's when these tendons turn to bone, gives the dinosaurs that strength.
All right, so we're ready for your questions, Mr. Ralph.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already had some sent in the chat. So you guys, if you have any more questions, keep them coming. Some of these I'll read and some of them I'll let you guys unmute to ask. But one of the kids want to know, how come it took so long for you guys to come forward with the findings?
It was that whole jigsaw puzzle problem. So when we have our big drawer of bits and pieces, it literally took 10 years to piece together enough bones to say this is something new. So
not all the bones were found at once. So it was, back 15 years ago when the site was originally found. But me and Josh would go out every year or every couple years and see what weathered out of the hill. So this wasn't your normal, typical excavation site, if there was a typical one, where we're out there with shovels digging it out. We let Mother Nature do it. So the bones would be exposed only when they got weathered out from the hill. So we would go back to the same location, and sometimes it was just one little fragment at a time, and then piecing those together, and then having a little bit of extra time during the pandemic when we're all stuck at home to get to some of our projects.
Absolutely. We have a question from William, and he is one of our friends out in the Caribbean. William, go ahead and ask. You had a very interesting question, and I think they covered part of it, but I was actually curious myself about this. So go ahead and ask.
So good morning. So you partly answered my question, but how big was the Nevadadromeus compared to a human?
Oh, compared to a human? So Nevadadromeus was not a big dinosaur at all. So Nevadadromeus was probably at its tallest, as tall as the table in front of us. So maybe mid-thigh on me, hip on Becky.
Yeah, so small child, think preschool, before school starts.
Probably as long as this table though, because these animals have really long tails. So maybe 2-3 feet tall using English metrics, and then about maybe 4 feet long.
That's very interesting. We have a question from one of the kids here in Nevada, and they want to know, what is the rarest bone that you guys have ever found in your careers?
The rarest, I would have to say the rarest fossil that I found that's kind of a bone, we've only found in the entire state of Nevada one tooth of a tyrannosauroid. So that's the ancestors of tyrannosaurs. We found one tooth from the front of the jaw, and that was found in Valley of Fire, and it's not too far away from Nevadadromeus. So we know the ancestors of tyrannosaurs lived here in Nevada based upon a single tooth.
I'll say for rare, obviously a new species of dinosaurs would be rare to, not everyone, we feel privileged that we got to name a new species, and that not all scientists get to do that. So I think Nevadadromeus is pretty rare. And then we also have a couple projects that are unidentified. So we have some 500 million year old Cambrian fossil that we've asked other experts and colleagues, and still unknown. So there's a lot of ancient or prehistoric life in the history of Earth that we still have yet to discover.
I mean, it seems like everything is like kind of brand new, the stuff that you guys are discovering. I have a question myself, like to piggyback off that with the Tyrannosaurus relative, how is it that only a tooth is found and nothing else? Like, what are some hypotheses or theories that you guys in paleontology come up with?
So teeth are the hardest part of your body. And so to survive the processes of geology, for survive the processes of fossilization and then being re-exposed, those really hard parts of the body are the most likely to be preserved. So we usually find more teeth than anything else of animals, of prehistoric animals. So if the animal is on the landscape, there's probably a tooth of it somewhere. That's not to say we haven't found one of their bones yet. We're looking. It's just there's only a couple really tiny slivers of dinosaur age rocks in Nevada. So stay tuned, I guess.
Would you attribute some of that to the weathering, the harsh weather that occurs out here in Nevada?
I'd more attribute it to the geologic history of Nevada. So during the age of dinosaurs, the west coast of North America got crumpled up like a great big train wreck. So again, the mountains would look more like the modern Andes, really high elevation. And then after that, they've been stretched apart like Play-Doh. So the interplay between squished and stretched has completely messed up our rocks and the fossils in those.
There's a lot of fascinating science here, and it seems like it's ever revolving. We have one of the kids here is asking, how many bones does a dinosaur tail have?
That's actually a really good question. It varies from group of animals to group of animals. I think the last I read, the group of animals, the Thescelosaurs, to which Nevadadromeus belongs, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but if memory serves me correctly, I believe they had 20 tail vertebrae. You remember what it is for duckbills?
I want to say it was 35 for duckbills, like we're in the 30, around there.
Yeah, so their tails are long.
Wow. So I wanted to see if we could address like how old is the oldest dinosaur bone that you guys have found, like estimated wise, here in the state of Nevada?
Your tracks.
Oh, okay. So that's not a bone. Okay, so I'll answer it in two parts, right? So here in Nevada, our record of dinosaurs dates back to what are called dinosauromorphs. So they're the animals that morphed into dinosaurs, so the cousins of dinosaurs. So 240 million years ago, we don't have any body fossils or bones from these animals, but we have footprints. Footprints so well preserved, they preserve their skin scales. So their skin impression in this mud when Nevada was on the edge of a really big sea, and these animals would have been running around, maybe catching insects or something. So that's like our oldest, dinosaur-like animal. But here in Nevada, our dinosaurs kind of like our bone fossils date back to the type of rock or the age of rock that we have in Nevada. So the couple outcrops where we find dinosaurs, one is about 120 million years ago in the Cretaceous, and then the other site in the Valley of Fire is about 100 million years ago. So that's how old our dinosaur bones are here.
And is there, how do you guys decipher between a rock and between a bone?
When we're talking about rocks that we're talking about fossils that are millions of years old, the bone is rock now. And so when it goes through the process of fossilization, that's the cell by cell replacement of the bone cells by whatever minerals that are in the groundwater. Like poor Nevadadromeus here is probably mostly quartz now. In some cases, the bones are replaced by a mineral called calcite. So it just depends whatever the minerals are in the groundwater it's at a microscopic scale, and over thousands to millions of years, it's the replacement of the original organic material with minerals, inorganic minerals.
But when we're looking for bones and we're trying to distinguish between a fossilized bone versus a rock when we're out looking, it really comes down to texture and patterns. So we're looking at those little changes of texture and pattern in a rock that makes it stand out. So it's not the shape. Some people think it's the shape of a rock or a shape within a rock. It really, really is the texture of it. Just like we have that, we know that the bone that we have has that spongy texture in our bones, in our modern bones. Same thing with dinosaurs. They will have that kind of spongy texture to it. If it's petrified woods, it will look like bark on a tree with all those lines on it. So really just getting your eyes used to different textures and patterns.
And what is the largest bone that you guys, each of you have found in your careers?
So the biggest one that we found, the two of us have found together, is still in the ground. And so we have a dinosaur that's in central Nevada that is at least 6 feet long so far, and it's still going into the hill. And so hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to secure the funding and the time to go up there and keep digging on this thing. We still don't know what type of dinosaur it is,
But that reminds me, Ralph, so this unidentified large animal or dinosaur that we have found in central Nevada, Eureka, Nevada, PBS Vegas just, we filmed a segment for them for their PBS STEAM camp, where they actually came out to our excavation site, and that should be airing soon. We're still waiting on the date for that, but if you guys tune into PBS Vegas, we're going out to an excavation site to this place where this dinosaur is found.
you can see it on TV.
That's exciting stuff, and we'll definitely keep everyone appraised of that. We have a couple more questions, and we'll let you guys go. One of the students want to know, what is the smallest bone that you guys have ever found?
I would say the smallest bone that I've ever found is I was working on rocks in Douglas County, Nevada, which is the far western side of the state, south of Reno, Nevada. And we were screening sediment and getting Miocene, which is about 10 million year old rat tail bones. They're like 1 millimeter long. So that's probably the smallest.
Yes, same thing. So about out in Esmeralda County here in Nevada, same thing. We have like a microsite where you can't really see it when you're out in the field. You can kind of, but what we do is in those situations is we actually, if we start seeing a little bit of bones or tiny bones, we'll scoop up where the bones are coming out of and then bring it back into the lab where we look at that sediment underneath a microscope. So some of those bones that we're not even finding with our naked eyes, we have to look with a microscope. So we've, small mammals, birds, anything like that can have really, really teeny tiny bones.
And this is a specific question. One of the students would like to know, was the Nevadadromeus, was it, I believe they're trying to say omnivorous, like what are they, there's a lot of scientific terms here.
Sure. So yes, it was a small plant eater. So it did have some teeth, but it was a plant eater. So grinding up that vegetation on the sides of the riverbanks, running from the meat eaters.
All right. And okay, so before we let you go, where can our viewers go to learn more about the Nevada Science Center and any upcoming events?
So you can visit our website, sciencecenternevada.org. We'll have some events. Right now, we're kind of transitioning between our 9 months of school year to our summer programming. So staying up to date on our social media. You do a great job, Ralph, getting everyone out our videos, posts, after we're done with this live event. So, subscribe to the YouTube channels. Shoot us an email. We're always open to helping anyone out there.
And if you're interested in learning or hearing the story of Nevadadromeus again, there's going to be an article coming out in the Las Vegas Review Journal shortly. That's going to be highlighting just the
I think this Sunday.
Publication of the new dinosaur.
That's exciting stuff. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll have a recording of this available hopefully by the end of today. And we look forward to seeing you guys on future learning events.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.